Hello and good noon, I guess. Not morning. It's noon whenever these go live, so good noon, my dear listeners. I hope you are doing well today. Today, we have a fairly long video, most likely. Maybe not long as far as time goes, but we're going to have a fairly large collection to go over. So today's video is 9 stories involving creepy kids. That's right, this is a follow-up to the original Creepy Kids stories. Less a follow-up and more just a part 2, I suppose. Those stories were fairly well received, so I figured why not do another one? And it took me a while to gather these up, and I had a couple stragglers, so I figured why not do a long video? Why not do 9 stories instead of just the normal 6 or 5? I hope you all enjoy these, and if you do, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you on that part. That all said, here are 9 creepy kid stories from Reddit. Enjoy. As a child, I frequently suffered from awful nightmares. I would dream almost nightly of a young girl being hurt, murdered, or just straight up dying in some way. It led to my mother keeping her door unlocked at night so I could crawl into bed with her instead of waking her up. It would drive me to hysterics. It was the same girl every night. I could only make out that she was young, blonde, and always the same person every time. She felt really familiar, but I figured it was because she was the same girl from all my nightmares. At one point, they stopped. It was a few weeks after this that my cousin stayed the night, as my aunt was going out of town. She had a lot of medical issues, but they were managed by medication. That same night, I had another nightmare, a repeat of what had already happened. I woke up to my cousin sitting in the corner of my room, soaked and crying, begging for me to go get my mother. I later realized that this was sleep paralysis. As I went to go wake up my mom, I found my actual cousin on the living room floor having a violent seizure. If I hadn't woken up that night, she would have died. She had fallen on our hardwood and got a head injury from the bang. It was fixable, but wouldn't have been if I hadn't caught her then. It was in the hospital that I noticed my cousin looked similar to the girl that I always dreamt about. I can't pinpoint if it was really her in my dreams. The dreams were always fairly blurry, but I didn't have one again after that. Personally, I believe some sort of angel or ghost gave me a premonition that saved her life. I'm new to this sub, but I think that this belongs here. A few nights ago, as I was getting my 2.5-year-old ready for bed, she started saying really strange things. It started with her talking about her other daddy, or sometimes her old dad. I kind of played along for a minute, but that's when it got creepy. She kept saying that she was a bad baby. We told her, no, you're a good girl. And then she said, no, I'm bad. Bad babies start fires. That was when I stopped playing along, as I actually had a house burned down when I was a teenager, so I don't play when it comes to fire. I was just wondering if anybody else had a child say something like this, and what would the proper response be? We just told her she's not a bad girl, and that she's actually a very good girl and very smart, and that fires are very dangerous and could hurt people. Also, that she only has one dad, and that's me. She hasn't said anything else like this since. I just heard about this subreddit from Matthew Santoro, and it reminded me of a story from when I was a toddler that I'd almost forgotten until now. I thought it would be nice to share here. My parents used to bring this story to the table whenever people talked about the supernatural at family reunions. This happened very often due to many people in my family claiming to have had an encounter with paranormal beings or sightings of extraterrestrial presence. My mom says she's never believed in anything of that nature, which is why to this day she still gets the chills when telling the story of when I was a toddler and I talked about him. The first instance my parents recall this was one night when they were sleeping in their bedroom. I must have been like 1.5 years old since I was in my nursery room due to my mom being pregnant with my sister. They heard a rat-like chewing noise in the living room and quickly got up to check it out. When they turned the lights on, they saw me sitting by the cupboard with a box of cookies between my legs and a cookie in my hand. They were surprised that at my age, I didn't mind being in the middle of a dark room at night, and they say they remember asking me questions in the same way you do to young children, where, you make baby voices to be cute and don't really expect an answer. Until at one point my dad asked if I was being brave because I knew my guardian angel was looking over me, to which I replied, he. This took them off guard, so they tried to ask me who he was, but I just repeated, he, without giving any sign as to who I was talking about. According to my mom, since there was nobody else in the house, they both assumed I was talking about an imaginary friend, and they let it go. The second instance, which is when my mom started to really get creeped out, was weeks after this incident. They realized they had to keep cookies, candies, etc. in the upper cabinets out of my reach. Now, I've loved cookies since forever, but I never threw a tantrum for not getting them, even when they were in sight. My parents say they were happy that I wasn't one of those kids, at least until they found out why. This occasion was in broad daylight. My dad was at work, so it was my mom who experienced this. She was busy doing house chores, but would come into the living room every now and then to check on me while I was playing. She says that from the other rooms, she would hear me babble as if I were talking to someone, but that when she went into the living room, I would go silent. She assumed I was just babbling nonsense, so she'd go back to do laundry or wash dishes or whatnot, knowing that as long as she could hear me, I wasn't up to something. This was until one time I stopped talking while she was gone, and she says that for a moment she didn't realize I was quiet, and by the time she did, she came to check on me. I already had a cookie in my hand. She remembers searching around the room to see if I could have somehow made a ladder out of the drawers, or picked up a leftover cookie from somewhere, but everything in the room was clean and orderly. She still doesn't know how I could have possibly have gotten that cookie, if not by some paranormal activity. Eventually, she asked me how I got the cookie, and all I said was, he. This strange situation of me getting cookies out of nowhere happened a few other times in the next couple weeks, but now other people were home. In essence, my grandparents, uncles, cousins, etc. Which, to me, added to the credibility of my parents' story, since those relatives actually confirmed that no one ever gave me the cookie because my parents had told them not to, and that they could have sworn they never saw me go anywhere near the cupboard to get them myself, or else they would have tried to have stopped me. My dad says he even started to believe I was hiding a few cookies somewhere I could reach so that I wouldn't have to wait for them to give me one, but now says he doesn't truly believe I could have plotted that at such an age. Either way, they found the whole thing creepy, and my dad decided to stop buying cookies altogether, which seemed to work for a while. The next, and allegedly also the last, time it happened was weeks before my sister was born, at least 3 months after the first incident. This is also the creepiest event from my mom. She says that she was just relaxing on the couch, watching TV while I played on the ground with the toy that I had gotten for Christmas, until eventually I said, hungry. She used to have a schedule for when I was supposed to eat, so she told me I had to wait, and vividly remembers that I scowled, turned around angrily, babbled something, and then she heard someone whisper, cookie. I swear I see her shudder every time she says this part, so I can tell that she really believes that she heard it. Now, as I said before, she's not a superstitious woman, and still says she's unconvinced about the paranormal, but she says at the time she just wanted to be safe, so she told my dad to buy cookies again. They say that afterwards, it never happened again, and they never found me with a cookie they didn't give me themselves, and I never mentioned him again. But they both still find it creepy, and can't explain what happened during that time. My dad says that since whoever he was never did anything malicious to me or them, maybe it was a guardian angel of sorts. Or at least he prefers to believe that over any other alternative. My 4-year-old son started to talk about an imaginary friend named Bobo when he was about 3.5. He would say things about what Bobo tells him or where he saw Bobo playing. So I asked him what Bobo looks like, and he said, just like me, but with black hair. My son is a blonde. Bobo started to become a more frequent topic. He would say things like, Bobo was at the door, let him in. To which my husband opened the door and said, oh, come on in, Bobo. We would all laugh. Recently, about 2 months ago, my son told me that Bobo looks different. He has alligator teeth and skin. He keeps talking about the things Bobo does and will say, Bobo is at the door. Then one day he goes, Bobo has a friend. I asked him what Bobo's friend's name was, and he said, his name is Bobo too. We also moved recently, and for the first 2 weeks or so, he would say, the Bobos don't know where I live. Then the week he stopped mid-play and goes, "Do you hear that? I need to get the door. The Bobos are here." He runs to the door and opens it, then counts to 16 and says, "Wow, 16 Bobos." Now he's making a picture with glitter glue for his friends. Why do they have to have such a creepy name? My 5-year-old is sitting at his Mickey Mouse table the other day eating ravioli when all of a sudden he goes, "Mom!" And I respond, "What's up, baby?" He keeps his chin tilted down, just a little, looks up with just his eyeballs, grins, and in the creepiest monotone voice he sings, "Tell me you're sick. Tell me your sins." Then he smiles like the Joker, does his own little laugh, and keeps eating his ravioli like that wasn't weird or anything. Back when I was either 6 or 7 years old, I had a nightmare. A nightmare that changed everything. One night, I stayed up with my father watching alien movies. Stuff got too real, so I went to sleep. A few hours later, I woke up due to a horrible dream I had had. I called out for help, but no one came. Even the ones I shared a room with didn't wake up. I gave in and decided to go to my parents' room. I got out of the bed, turned on the lights, then I quickly ran across into my parents' room. "Mom? Dad?" No response. I got on the bed and tried waking my mom up. She didn't wake up. I tried my dad. Fortunately, he did wake up. We tried to wake my mom, only to discover that she had passed out. We called for help, then went to check on my sisters and the housekeeper. They were both unresponsive. Then help arrived, the neighbors and the watchman. Well, later on my father discovered that the housekeeper had forgotten to remove the charcoal grill, and it had led to the poisoning of the air due to the carbon monoxide. That is why everyone passed out. I'm kinda glad that I stayed up and watched a movie with him. Otherwise, I would have probably had a peaceful night and woken up to a house full of dead people. A few years back, when my son was 4 and my daughter was 2, my son went through a phase where he'd claim his great-great-grandfather would come to visit him. Not wanting to encourage or feed into it because it sort of creeped me out, I would usually just listen and say okay, and then brush it off. Finally, one day, I asked a few questions. I asked my son what his name was, and he told me he doesn't want you to know his name. Okay, so I asked what he looked like, and he's tall, almost to the ceiling because he floats. And he talks, but not with his mouth. That night, we're all 3 in the living room, and he brings him up again. Almost exasperated, trying not to be freaked the hell out, I say, "Okay, well, where is he now?" Both kids simultaneously focus on one point on the ceiling way across the room, proceed to follow it with their eyes until they finally land right next to me on my couch, and my son tells me, "He's right next to you, Mommy." Fast forward about 6 months, and we are eating dinner, just the 3 of us, and my back is to our open laundry room door. My daughter is sitting across from me eating, but she keeps looking over my shoulder, so I ask her what she was looking at. She tells me, "There's a man in there." I turn, look, and say, "Baby, there's no one there. It's okay. Eat your food." She says, "Okay," and goes back to eating, looks back up, covers her eyes, peeks through, and tells me, "But I see him." Great-great-grandfather stopped coming around shortly after, and neither kid has any recollection now, and I wish I could say the same. I told my 5-year-old daughter some lame knock-knock jokes, as she decided that she would tell me some jokes. There were the standard child nonsense jokes. Why did the elephant sit on the baby? To do wheeze on it. Then she asked, "What did the dead lady say?" I asked what, and she replied in a loud sing-song voice, "Where is my baby?" I didn't think that one was very funny. When I was younger, sometime in elementary school, we had moved into a new house from our previous trailer. I was a scaredy cat as a kid, and have memories of being scared and having nightmares in the trailer, but nothing like what I experienced in the new house. Within the first months of living in the house, I had started to see what I can only describe as a shadow figure with a fedora. I never gave him a name, or even gave him too much thought throughout the day, mostly because I was scared of him. He lived in my closet and gave me terrible night terrors, all with him as the centerpiece. Eventually, my parents got tired of rushing into my room in the middle of the night to calm me down, so they just let me sleep with them in their room. I don't remember any instances of him trying to harm me in waking life. All I can remember are the night terrors that he gave me. There's one in particular that I still remember in vivid detail today. To understand the dream, here's a little context. I live in Texas, and my grandmother's house at the time had woods next to it with very big trees. I remember being creeped out by this one particular tree because it looked a little like a silhouette of a man hushing with his fingers. That's the context. Now, to the dream. In this dream, I was standing on my grandmother's porch. There's a very dim porch light as my only light source, and I can barely see into the yard. What I do see is that tree, right in the front yard instead of in the woods where it usually was. Under the tree, I saw the silhouette of the man that lived in my closet. I couldn't see his face as the tree shade engulfed him in shadows. I do, however, notice him lean forward and do the same hushing motion with his fingers, telling me to shh. After that, the wind started to pick up and he faded away like a mist. The leaves on the trees began to shake violently from the wind, and eventually the leaves turned into bats and they all flew away, leaving the tree looking dead. 18 years old, and these dreams still come to me in flashes sometimes. They genuinely send chills down my spine just thinking about some of these dreams. I still have some nightmares to this day, but none necessarily scare me as much as those that I had as a kid. The dreams that bother me nowadays are more disturbing or gruesome than creepy. To this day, I don't know whether I just had an overactive imagination as a kid, or if something was really following me and giving me these night terrors. Welcome back, friends. I hope that wasn't too terrifying for you. I know that stories with children can tend to be, what's the good word for it? Horrifying? Terrifying? Scary? All those? All wrapped into one giant adjective to describe the horror and terror that comes out of a child's imagination whenever things are, creepy. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please consider leaving a like. That's the thumbs up button. That helps the video a lot, trust me. Also, if you did enjoy my narration, please consider subscribing to the channel, clicking the subscribe button, hitting the bell, I suppose, if you want to. But for sure subscribing, because that helps me a lot. Also, if you are feeling so bold as to do so, please leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you, and I try to reply to every comment that gets left on my videos, and all the replies that go on in those conversations. All stories are sourced in the description below, minus the one story that requested that I not source it. It is not sourced, so if there's a blank there for one of the stories, that's why it was requested to not be sourced. That's fine. All my social media links are also down there, my Reddits, my Twitters, my Facebooks, that's it. Go ahead and stalk me on all those. I would love to hear from you there. I post about my videos mostly. Twitter's a little more active than the other two, so follow me there if you really want to talk to me. All that said, I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, sleep well.